First Republic Bank has become the second largest bank failure in U.S. history.
It is the second largest bank failure in American history and the third bank failure since March this year.
Is there anything about the details of how or what happened that surprised you?
Is United States of America really under the control of inflation? It's a question. What will be the impact of that on India? That is the another question. On 10th March 2023, America's 16th largest bank, that is the Silicon Valley Bank, got collapsed. And this of course becomes a breaking news for an entire world. Back to this collapse of Silicon Valley Bank, another largest bank, that is the Signature Bank, was shut down on 12th March 2023 after depositors withdraw large amount of money due to fear of collapse of Silicon Valley Bank. Back to back, two big problems I would say. This is actually a big collapse after the great Lehman Brothers collapse which had happened in the year 2008.
When Lehman Brothers got in trouble, the thinking was just let it fail. That was an enormous shock to the system. Others were in trouble as well. One by one, we learned that major financial institutions, some of the largest lenders in America, had made bad loans, bundled them into securities that were virtually worthless, insured them with companies that couldn't stand behind the insurance, and in the end, the federal government had bailed them out because we need these big banks to keep the economy.
We all know that because of this Lehman Brothers collapse, there was a huge impact on all the economies and the stock markets, Indian stock market as well. So now since these large banks in US are collapsing, here we get into another question. Are other regional banks of United States of America also in danger? So Janet Yellen, who is the US Treasury head, says that it won't bail out other banks if other community banks fail, like Silicon Valley Bank or the Signature Bank.
These problems were unique to Silicon Valley Bank, or can you say whether there will be other regional bank failures?
Well, look, let me just say that we want to make sure that the troubles that exist at one bank don't create contagion to others that are sound, and a goal always of supervision and regulation is to make sure that contagion can't
Actually, regional banks are in danger as these banks have invested heavily in US government bonds. And these US government bonds have also lost heavily in their portfolio as demand for new bonds against the old bonds have increased due to high yield. At this moment, if we say fundamentally, then balance sheets of these regional banks have become heavily toxic and they have lost their value exorbitantly. In this situation, if big investors start to redeem their deposits from the banks, then the banks may start facing the cash crunch. Now, if this cash crunch happens into these banks, then these regional banks may have to sell their bonds in losses, which will push them towards the bankruptcy. FDIC, that is the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, cannot bail out these banks as only 0.03% of the cash is insured, which may be roughly $125 billion against the $9.5 billion. So this is what is the situation of the banks, and one of the main reasons for this situation is the inflation. So if we go into the recent past of COVID days, we can see that after COVID-19 is over, there was a pick in demand, and it was a demand pull inflation. More or due to Russia-Ukraine war, energy crisis happened, which resulted into the increase in the prices of the oil and gas. Transportation costs also got picked, and it resulted into the cost push inflation.
Moving on now, the global energy market is under pressure amid rising political tensions between Russia and Ukraine. For the first time in 7 years, oil prices touched $90 a barrel after surpassing $90 for the first time since October 2014.
Now to beat this inflation, government launched new bonds and securities and increased the repo rate as well as the reverse repo. Due to this, what happened? Investors who were investing into the startups and other businesses through Silicon Valley Bank have started investing into these new bonds, and then these startups started facing the cash crunch, and that is the obvious situation. Now, to overcome this issue, Silicon Valley Bank had to liquidate their old bonds into the losses. This further turned into the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank. To add spice into the situation, US government has printed more money, which has further worsened the situation of inflation.
The message so far has gone towards the unprecedented, so to speak, nature of how these banks ultimately collapsed. It was a combination of things like Federal Reserve interest rate policy being tightened at such a quick pace, all the way to the rush of many depositors to withdraw their money in such a short amount of time, for which maybe even aspects of social media were partly to blame in causing those so-called runs in the bank.
Now, from India point of view, let's understand what is the impact. So, rupee against the dollar will hurt, and as the rise in US dollar will further increase, import cost of crude oil will obviously become high. Not only crude oil, but also the natural gas will become high. Moreover, Indian IT sector may face a challenging situation, because we all know Indian IT firms draw the bulk of their revenues from the banking, financial services and the insurance sector, that is the BFSI sector. Within the BFSI sector, as per the JP Morgan statistics, the exposure of IT sector, I am saying Indian IT sector, to the US banks is approximately 62%, and towards Europe it is approximately 23%. So in this scenario of energy driven inflation, we feel that the renewables as well as the green sector can be given an importance, because it can obviously help meet the energy demands and will lessen the imports of crude oil and gas, which will decrease the impact on rupee. So this is what is the short video on the United States of America banks and their impact, which can happen on Indian stock market, and obviously what we feel which is the best sector, or which is the sector which is going to get harmed because of these losses into the banks and the problems into the banks. So thank you from the team Fintocrats.